Picture this. It's 2:17 a.m. in a cramped physics laboratory at Princeton University, 1957. Dr. Hugh Everett III sits hunched over equations that would forever change how we understand reality itself. His pen scratches across paper, formulating what would become known as the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. But 3,000 miles away, in a dimly lit apartment in New York City, another man has already been teaching the very same principles for over 2 decades, not through mathematics, but through the ancient art of imagination. His name was Neville Goddard, and what he understood about the nature of reality would make even quantum physicists question everything they thought they knew about the universe. The connection between these two worlds, the mystical and the scientific, begins with a simple earth-shattering premise. Consciousness creates reality. But this isn't just New Age wishful thinking. This is a principle that spans from the ancient Vedic texts of Hinduism to the cutting-edge laboratories where quantum physicists are discovering that observation literally collapses infinite possibilities into singular experiences. And at the center of it all stands Neville's most radical teaching, the law of assumption, a technique so powerful that it seems to bend the very fabric of space-time itself. In the summer of 1943, while World War II raged across continents, Neville stood before a packed auditorium in Los Angeles and made a declaration that would have sounded like pure fantasy to most listeners. "Assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled," he said, his voice cutting through the thick California air, "and your assumption, though false if persisted in, will harden into fact." What the audience didn't realize was that Neville wasn't just offering spiritual comfort. He was describing a fundamental law of quantum mechanics that wouldn't be formally recognized by science for another 3 decades. The ancient Hindu concept of Maya, the illusory nature of perceived reality, suddenly takes on new meaning when viewed through the lens of quantum superposition. In the Bhagavad Gita, written over 2,000 years ago, Krishna tells Arjuna that the wise see beyond the multiplicity of apparent forms to recognize the underlying unity of existence. This non-dual awareness, the understanding that observer and observed are one, is precisely what quantum physicists discovered when they realized that the act of measurement fundamentally alters the system being measured. The observer and the observed are inextricably linked, just as Neville taught when he insisted that you are both the dreamer and the dream. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. At 11:23 p.m. on March 15, 1962, a young physicist named John Wheeler was walking through the corridors of Princeton when a thought struck him with the force of revelation. He realized that information, not matter or energy, might be the fundamental building block of reality. His famous phrase, "it from bit," wouldn't be coined for another 2 decades. But the seed was planted that night. The idea that reality emerges from the processing of information, from consciousness making choices and observations. What Wheeler was discovering through rigorous scientific method, Neville had been teaching through direct experience. That imagination, the very faculty by which consciousness processes and creates information, is the divine creative power itself. The concept of parallel universes, once relegated to the realm of science fiction, became scientific orthodoxy when physicists realized that quantum mechanics demands the existence of multiple realities occurring simultaneously. Every quantum measurement creates a branching of reality into countless parallel worlds. In some of these worlds, you made different choices. In others, entirely different laws of physics might apply. This is the scientific validation of what Neville called states of consciousness. Infinite possible realities existing simultaneously, with your imagination as the navigator between worlds. The implications are staggering. When Neville taught his students to enter the silence and assume the feeling of their desire fulfilled, he wasn't asking them to engage in positive thinking. He was instructing them to quantum tunnel into a parallel reality where their assumption was already fact. The void state that advanced practitioners describe, that profound emptiness where thought ceases and pure being remains, might actually be consciousness accessing the quantum vacuum, the field of infinite potential from which all possibilities emerge. This connection becomes even more profound when we examine the Hindu concept of Brahman, the unchanging reality underlying the phenomenal world. In the Upanishads, consciousness is described as the ultimate reality, the ground of all being. Modern quantum field theory describes a similar concept, the quantum vacuum, a field of pure potential that underlies all manifest reality. When mystics speak of returning to the source, of recognizing their true nature as consciousness itself, they might be describing the same state that physicists call the quantum vacuum, the void pregnant with infinite possibilities. The teaching of detachment, so central to both Hindu philosophy and Neville's approach, takes on new scientific significance when we understand quantum decoherence. In quantum mechanics, a system remains in superposition, existing in all possible states simultaneously, until observation collapses it into a single state. But here's the crucial point. The more emotionally invested the observer, the more likely they are to collapse the wave function prematurely, locking themselves into undesired outcomes. True detachment allows consciousness to navigate quantum possibilities without premature collapse, maintaining access to the full spectrum of potential realities. Consider the implications of the quantum Zeno effect discovered in 1977. This phenomenon shows that frequent observations of a quantum system can actually freeze its evolution, preventing it from changing states. In spiritual terms, this suggests that anxious checking for results, constant worry about outcomes, literally prevents manifestation from occurring. The quantum universe responds to the quality of attention, not its intensity. This is why Neville emphasized the importance of assuming once and then dropping the concern entirely, allowing the quantum field to reorganize around the new assumption without interference. The concept of desired reality, popularized in certain spiritual communities, gains scientific legitimacy when we understand the role of consciousness in quantum mechanics. If every possible reality already exists in the quantum multiverse, then shifting to your desired reality becomes a matter of quantum navigation rather than creation. The techniques Neville taught, revision, entering the wish fulfilled, living from the end, are essentially protocols for quantum tunneling between parallel realities. But perhaps the most profound connection lies in understanding what imagination actually is. Neuroscience has shown that imagining an experience activates the same neural networks as actually experiencing it. The brain cannot distinguish between vividly imagined and physically experienced events when it comes to encoding memory and shaping future behavior. When we add quantum mechanics to this understanding, imagination becomes revealed as consciousness's ability to access parallel realities, to experience alternate versions of events that exist simultaneously in the quantum multiverse. The ancient Vedic seers spoke of different levels of reality, from gross physical matter to subtle mental formations to the causal realm of pure potentiality. Modern physics describes remarkably similar layers: classical matter obeying Newtonian laws, quantum fields governed by probability waves, and the quantum vacuum as the source of all possibilities. When spiritual traditions speak of manifesting from the causal plane, the level of pure thought and intention, they might be describing consciousness operating at the quantum level, where thoughts quite literally create reality. The void state that advanced practitioners describe, characterized by the complete absence of thought, desire, or identity, bears a striking resemblance to what physicists call the quantum vacuum. This isn't empty space but rather a field of pure potentiality, pregnant with virtual particles constantly emerging and dissolving. When consciousness enters this state, it may actually be merging with the very creative matrix of reality itself, accessing the level from which all possibilities arise. What makes this connection even more remarkable is the role of belief and assumption in quantum mechanics. The placebo effect, now rigorously documented by medical science, demonstrates that belief alone can produce measurable physical changes. But quantum mechanics suggests something even more radical: that consciousness doesn't just influence reality through biochemical pathways, but through direct interaction with the quantum field itself. Assumption, in Neville's teaching, becomes a form of quantum programming, instructing the field of infinite possibilities about which reality to manifest. The concept of parallel selves living in alternate realities suddenly becomes more than metaphor when we understand quantum mechanics. If every possible choice creates a branching universe, then versions of you exist who made every conceivable decision. Revision, one of Neville's most powerful techniques, might actually be consciousness communicating across quantum boundaries, sharing information between parallel selves to reshape the past in ways that influence the present. The relationship between time and consciousness takes on new meaning in this context. Einstein showed us that time is relative, dependent on the observer's frame of reference. Quantum mechanics revealed that causality itself might be observer-dependent. When Neville taught that imagination could revise the past, he might have been describing consciousness's ability to operate outside linear time, to access the quantum level where all moments exist simultaneously. The ancient Hindu teaching of Lila, the divine play of consciousness, finds its modern expression in quantum mechanics' revelation that reality is fundamentally probabilistic rather than deterministic. The universe isn't a machine following predetermined laws, but rather consciousness playing with infinite possibilities, exploring every conceivable variation of experience across multiple dimensions of reality. This understanding transforms our relationship with desire itself. From a quantum perspective, desire isn't about lacking something and trying to obtain it. Rather, desire becomes consciousness recognizing a parallel reality where the desired state already exists, and then quantum tunneling to that version of reality. The feeling of desire is actually consciousness detecting the gravitational pull of an alternate self who already possesses what you seek. The teaching of oneness, central to both non-dual spirituality and quantum mechanics, reveals that separation is indeed an illusion. Quantum entanglement demonstrates that particles can remain connected across vast distances, instantly influencing each other regardless of space and time. At the deepest level, everything in the universe is interconnected in ways that classical physics could never explain. When mystics speak of recognizing the self in all beings, they might be describing direct perception of this quantum interconnectedness. The implications for human potential are staggering. If consciousness truly is the fundamental creative force of the universe, if imagination really is God creating through individualized awareness, then the limitations we accept are simply habits of thought that can be transcended through proper understanding and application of these principles. The void state, the quantum vacuum, parallel realities, assumption as quantum programming, these aren't separate phenomena but different aspects of a single unified understanding of how consciousness creates and navigates reality. As we stand on the threshold of a new understanding that bridges ancient wisdom and cutting-edge science, one question remains. If these principles are true, if consciousness really does create reality through the mechanisms described by both mystics and quantum physicists, then what becomes possible when we fully embrace our role as conscious creators, navigating an infinite multiverse of potential experiences? The answer, as Neville would say, lies not in the realm of theory, but in the laboratory of direct experience. In the profound silence where assumption becomes fact, where consciousness discovers its true nature as the creative principle underlying all existence. In laboratories around the world, physicists continue to probe deeper into the quantum realm, each discovery revealing new ways that consciousness and reality interweave in patterns that mystics have described for millennia. The convergence is undeniable, the implications transformative. We stand at a moment in human history where science and spirituality are revealing themselves to be different languages, describing the same fundamental truth. Consciousness is not produced by reality. Consciousness is reality experiencing itself through infinite variations across countless dimensions of possibility. The story that began in Princeton in 1957 continues in every moment when someone dares to assume their wish fulfilled, to enter the void state of pure potentiality, to recognize their true identity as consciousness itself, playing in the quantum field of infinite possibility. The ancient promise of the Vedic seers, the revolutionary insights of quantum mechanics, and the practical teachings of Neville Goddard converge in a single recognition. You are not a separate being navigating an external reality. You are consciousness itself, the very creative principle through which all realities emerge, exploring the infinite dimensions of what it means to exist.